Buy or sell Micropac Industries. So first off, read this disclaimer carefully. Then do your good deed of the day by liking and subscribing. So space exploration is definitively a very interesting theme. 11% from the 52-week low, minus 41% away from the 52-week highs. When we look at the components, we can see that Micropac Industries, yeah, they are in the space technology space. At the 52-week low, 30% away from the 52-week highs. Here is their website. Yeah, so Micropac can select all over the world those components that have the technological know-how requirements, competitiveness, and reliability to become an integral part of its portfolio of businesses' products. Okay, that's a very general way to communicate. I mean, they do have a broader. So they're not just 100% into like space. Here you can see, the various applications. The thing is that, they are in automotive, telecom, industrial, medical, aerospace, and the military. There are relatively few companies that are like 100% exposed to, space exploration. Given how, space exploration is, still an emerging industry, it's probably a good idea for it's a good thing from an investor perspective for Micropac Industries to have, diversification. So the red 200-week moving average, it's been a big deal before as resistance, and it's been very big deal as support. Extremely good time to buy here, here, and here. Well, we are testing that moving average right here and right now. Does that mean that we will see a winner? No. Looking at RSI, the current RSI is the same thing we had down here, which was also here. It was an extremely good time to turn bullish on Micropac Industries. Those who bought that RSI level here, they were able to gain, okay, now it's messed up a bit, 140%. That's pretty darn good. So this is another situation where we have a security that's pretty close to a key support level. It's closed slightly below it. Given that we have the combination of the moving average and the RSI, then I do think that it's more interesting from a bullish perspective than a bearish. The problem with shorting something like this is that even though, yes, the bears are in control, they have done a lot of damage, the fact is that we have seen a very big sell-off already. We are at a very low level also regarding daily RSI. When you look at this chart, it goes all the way back here to 2012. You see that the current reading is rare. We usually are higher. So the probability does not favor entering a new short position here. The probability is pushed in a more different direction. Potentially there is a bullish opportunity. So yeah. So I write 200 weekly moving average and RSI support. I give the bulls a 7. There's of course a big but. That 7 is completely contingent on those two indicators. If we were to see more weakness now, that would not be in line with those indicators functioning as support. And if we lose support, very big deal support like this, then that is obviously very bearish. But the bulls, they do have an opportunity now that they haven't had in a long time. Here is the seasonality data. I did not get anything from stock charts on MPAD. The reason is that it's an over-the-counter stock. The thing is that over-the-counter stocks, because they don't have the same liquidity, rarely part of ETFs, that actually is a benefit in certain market conditions. Because if ETFs are getting like butchered, then the over-the-counter stocks, they could just behave just very differently. So there is something interesting about being OTC in wild market conditions. Okay, The seasonality is a bit bearish into late October, but then as you can see, it turns pretty much rather bullish here all the way into 2nd of December. Given that we have limited data, I will give the bulls a 5 here on seasonality. It is an over-the-counter stock, so we do not get data from Saks.com. Let's go here to mark like that, market screener, MPAD. Let's see whether we do get some data here. Then we get some info. Oh, we do not get any consensus estimates here for Micropac Industries. In this case, given that we do not get data on the fundamentals, I will not give any score on the fundamentals. When it comes to doing fundamental analysis on a stock, the biggest opportunity is actually in these situations where you do not get any SAX rank, you don't get any consensus estimates. That is when you can do a deep dive into the fundamentals and find very interesting opportunities. So this is actually kind of good news. But yeah, doing a deep dive fundamental analysis, that is rather time consuming. So I will skip it a bit now, because it's so also up to interpretation, and given the industries Micropac has exposure to, which are some of them are very like emerging industries, the difficulty of fundamental analysis is also substantially higher, because a key part of fundamental analysis is not simply to look at what has happened, but to make projections about what is the different probable outcomes for 2023 and 2024 and so on. The problem for me today is that investing.com has crashed. I have this invalid symbol error, so I'm not able to do that classic relative performance study that I like to do. I don't get the correlations now, and investing.com has been down over the entire weekend. However, we can easily do some relative performance studies. So now I am comparing MPAD against the UFO ETF, and UFO is one of the few space exploration ETFs. You can see that MPAD, it has outperformed UFO for some time, but we then got into a classical pattern, and that is the double top. The double top also occurred here on these weekly data points. Here we got some weakness, and then the final rejection there. And it seems like we have a bit of a trend change now in favor of the bears, with the NPAD underperforming the broader UFO ETF. So let's look here at relative. Yeah, we don't get seasonality data. They simply are too fresh. So what we can do instead, that is to compare. Let's compare MPAD against the XLI. The industrials. That is where you find a lot of these aerospace stocks. The industrial sectors is very broad though. But yeah, here you can see MPAD against the XLI. Looking very big picture, we could draw a bit of a monster inverse head and shoulders pattern, monster shoulder, monster head, and maybe we are forming a monster shoulder. That would be rather bullish. This is an inverse head and shoulders pattern that's formed over many years. The problem is that this week we did see a very substantial rejection here, massive weakness from MPAD. So it certainly doesn't seem like there's a lot of people out there trading the inverse head and shoulders. Looking at seasonality, it actually is rather weak here into early November, but that is when MPAD starts to outperform significantly into almost into early February next year. In this case, on relative performance, We had some bullish data and bearish data cancel each other out. I do think I will lean a bit bullish with a 1 to the bulls, but that isn't much. We do have a 4.3 average in favor of the bulls. Uh, we do have 200 weekly moving average and RSI support. We have some time left. Let's run through some of the stocks in the UFO ETF. Iridium is on the top of the list, like that. Here we do see some strength here, which is bullish. The problem I do have here is that we have headed into a territory of potential failure. This is a double top pattern. If you bought iridium down here, then that doesn't mean you have to close. You can still have a position on, notwithstanding that we have a double top, well, a potential double top. The problem is for new positions. If you do not have any position on iridium, yes, we have seen strength, but to buy now, given that last week we did see that rejection from this, top double top level, this isn't a good time to enter a new position. So that's a very different difference there, whether you have a position on versus not having any position on. That will have a very substantial effect on how you trade various patterns. If I had a position on Iridium Communications and I saw this, I would certainly tighten my stops. Okay, let's Globe Star. Okay, so it's GSAT. Yeah, it's it's a bit messy. You can see here that this stock has very tall candlesticks, so a very high level of volatility. These stocks can be very interesting because you can make big gains quickly, but as far as where do you put in your stops, look at this candlestick here as an example. Within the day, it goes up, yeah, 40 plus percent, and then it closed down, it loses 22%. I mean, how on earth are you going to put on a stop with this kind of volatility? You almost can't. So when dealing with stocks like this, they are like my gambling positions, positions where I can't really put on a stop level because they are such a mess. I would put on a stop level though if I were to like short at a known high or buy at a known, established low. That's a bit of a different thing. But as it stands now, in like the middle of this range of volatility, let me just draw it in. You have this massive range here of just ridiculous volatility. So it's just it is just very difficult to put on a stop level. Just a mess. But then again, very, very exciting opportunities. Let's just look a bit here as an example. If you buy in the middle here as an example, it could go up like 76% and still be in the range. It could lose, minus 46. Well, actually, even minus 50% and still be just within the typical Globe Star range. Yeah. Yes, VR SAT is the next on the list. Here we have some weekly data points. You see that last week we had surgical rejection on the blue 100-week moving average, which was a very good place to put on a short position. Currently, it's a bit messy. If we go here to the daily data points, yeah, we have 200 daily moving average resistance, green 50-day support, but it's one of those situations where there's a lot of noise. So we did a bit of a deep dive into Micropac Industries. We looked at some of the stocks in the UFO ETF. Learned some important lessons. I think that Globestar is definitively very exciting as like almost like a gambling stock. If you buy the middle of these monster ranges, um, you know, the probability of sometime in the future being able to exit with some gain is there, especially if you get into the low end of the range. It just has this history of being able to go up, but if you put on a position like that, you have to just accept that it could actually be down 40% as well. So, but looking long term, I'm definitively bullish on space exploration and all the companies exposed to that. It's just that it could take more time than many people expect. You know, back in the 1800s, you did have books about space exploration, and even back then, people thought actually that we would go to the moon a lot earlier than we did. That's because we had a very simplistic idea of the complexities. And I think that that's a similar thing now. There's this talk of us being able to colonize Mars, but that is also very like there's very high levels of complexity. I mean, it will be easier to make the deserts on Earth bloom than to colonize Mars.